Welcome to the Wisdom to Wealth podcast. This is the podcast where I interview the wealthiest entrepreneurs and business owners in the world, and they get to share their stories from zero to wealth. I am your host, Shamar Star Cox, TV producer and marketing coach. My goal is to help 6 and 7 figure business owners get seen and get paid by creating binge worthy content on social media. I am also the founder of the Convert Content to Cash Challenge. So if you are a business owner, entrepreneur, or coach, you want to learn how to create content that sells on social media, feel free to DM the word challenge accepted on Instagram, TikTok, or LinkedIn, and I will personally send you an invite. Today, we have the lovely Cathy with us. She is a renowned teacher, top ranked podcaster, and best selling author. She hosts one of the top spiritual podcasts, Abundant Ever After, which has been downloaded 45 million times. And she's the author of the USA Today best-selling book Abundant Ever After, Tools for Creating a Life of Prosperity and Ease, drawing from the wisdom of Jewish mysticism, which I'm so happy we're going to jump into today, and ancient teachings. Cathy illuminates the path to spiritual growth and abundance. Cathy believes that abundance is not simply about material wealth, but also about aligning with one's purpose, experiencing joy, and cultivating meaningful connections. Cathy, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's really such a pleasure to be with you. Your audience knows that already, but I had the blessing of spending time with you a few weeks ago. And right away, we both felt like, have we known each other since we're 8 years old? Except that you weren't alive when I was 8 years old, because I'm at least 10 years older than you. But it was that kind of like, you don't have to explain your soul to somebody. We just kind of had this beautiful connection. So it's really nice to be back. And thank you. And I love listening to all the things that you do. Every time I'm reminded of what you do, I'm like, I need her as a coach. Like, I need to call her because she's just got so much extra. Isn't she extra, you guys? I was just telling her, I was like, even your most mediocre day, you're like Times Square level electricity for people.
I love that. Thank you so much. And it's so needed. It's a blessing that we get to have this conversation today. Let's dive into your story. Take us on your journey from where you started to where you are now.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited. I love the framing that you already set out that we're going to talk about. What does it mean to be wealthy and how do you expand? And I think that God created everything to thrive. Every redwood tree is born to be as tall as it needs to be. Every eagle was born to soar. And it includes human beings. Like, we are meant to have a full capacity so we can play in this incredible world that we've been given to live in. And I didn't know any of that when I was a kid. Let me say that again. I loved Rainbow Bright. I loved using my imagination. And so I was drawn to things that were magical and things that helped me to see that life is really extraordinary. And my favorite color was yellow. And I love the Care Bears. So I feel like innately, and I think a lot of kids tend to know the truth, right, at that level. But in my family, I was really sort of like an outsider because my family was really a little bit more on the gloomy side in terms of just really seeing the world as tough, and my parents had a horrible marriage. They had an even worse divorce. My mom was suffering from all of these issues because of her depression and sadness. My dad was sort of checked out, moved on to another family. He's been married a few times. He recently passed away. When he passed away, we wound up having a different relationship in my adult life, which is really a beautiful blessing. But it was really tough growing up. And so for me, I started asking big questions, like, how do we become an adult who's not like this, not miserable? And I also didn't get it. I was like, okay, so you're telling me that you go through this thing called school, which isn't a blast. It's fine. But you go through whatever just so you could grow up and that's your life. You're not fulfilled. What's the point? It's all a struggle. So I started looking into answers, why are we here? And I realized something pretty cool, which is the opposite of sadness is actually not happiness. It's purpose. Because in life, pain is inevitable. It's part of the journey, but suffering is optional. And I started looking at how different people turn their pain into purpose, turn their pain into wisdom. And I started realizing that when people wake up feeling that they are connected to God, that they're feeling that they're needed in the world, then no matter what their life circumstances, it's even bigger than happiness. It's purposeful. There's meaning in it. It doesn't matter then, because even the struggle itself is the opportunity, is the invitation to excavate from within themselves more of who they are. And so I started realizing that, like, my mom's sadness and my parents' marriage that was so difficult was all about, there was a lack of connection to God, and there was a lack of connection to purpose inside of whatever the struggle is. Because in life, sometimes the blessing is the challenge. Like, sometimes the fact, like right now, my daughter's 13 and she's my oldest of three. My youngest is 8. And she's struggling. Not, thank goodness she has a good group of friends, but the schoolwork is tough. And we met with her guidance counselor the other day, and she said, I wonder if the opportunity here is for you to learn not to avoid when things are hard, but to lean in and see what is your real capacity that you didn't know you had. And also, she said, I'm with you on, like, what can we make a little bit better for you in terms of how you learn or your teachers. I get you, but what do you get out of this? What's in it for you, right? And so all of a sudden she's like turned around because she sees this as an assignment. When we watch movies like Rocky, or we watch any movie, even Willy Wonka, Charlie Bucket, I guess he's the protagonist. Every movie is the same. They're going to go through an obstacle, but the obstacle is actually only set there by God to reveal to them how much greater they were than they knew that they were. And then it's not about who Rocky, slings in the ring at the end. It's who he became by remembering who he actually is. When Serena's on the court, she's not playing against this other player. She's playing against herself, right? It's what's inside of me that you don't even know, because I'm going to show you that I'm even more than you thought or I even knew I was. And then when she wins, it's not the win, it's the win for herself. So I started to get all of that reading books and studying from the age of 15 to 21. And what happened was I started reading all of these books, started getting so interested. And I went on a trip to Jerusalem after college, which was supposed to be like my, go do something interesting your summer after college. And I wound up staying in Jerusalem for 3 years. I wound up staying there and learning and falling so in love with God and so in love with the world. And then I learned so much about how the technology actually works within us to connect to the abundance. And that is when everything I touched, my friends were like, everything you touch turns to gold. I'm like, you have the same power within you. You just keep looking outside of yourself for the power. It's actually in here because God put it inside of you, right? And the more that you start to understand it, it makes it so fun to wake up every day and just get to be here and see what magic you're going to start to collect.
Oh, just when you talk, and everything inside of me is like, yes, this because this is what's missing from a lot of people's lives. Like, I mean, just the question that you asked yourself when you were a kid, how do we become an adult who is not miserable? Like,
Oh my gosh.
who thinks like that as a child? Like typically we're just growing up in our parents' footsteps and we think this is just life. But for you, it was like, something's off here.
Something's off.
I love that. And then here you are in Jerusalem. Oh, actually, let me take it back a little bit. You were like, I loved watching Care Bears. Me too. I used to love watching Care Bears. But here you are, like you went to Jerusalem and then you got to learn something, like just really understanding our makeup, understanding what God has put
Yeah.
inside of us, and then how you can use that to attract abundance. And now, because of that, everything you touch turns to gold, right? So
Totally.
I absolutely love that you're sharing this, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk about like what actually happened when you were in Jerusalem. How did you, I don't want to say stumble upon, how did you arrive upon this
Yeah.
knowledge and wisdom when it comes to abundance?
Well, first of all, I mean, the first 3 weeks we were just kind of like going around the land, all of Israel. And I was like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. It's so interesting. And we're walking where, you can go to the town where Abraham lived. They have all of this archaeological evidence. And you're just like, oh my God, the Bible is real. Like, it's wild and special, right? It's really special. But I didn't have a lesson until the last day before we were supposed to leave for the airport. My friend said, do you want to go to a class in Jerusalem, like, and sit down and learn a little bit of do like a Bible study? I'm like, sure. So we sit down, this rabbi walks in and he basically writes the word on the board in Hebrew for the Sabbath, which is the word Shabbat. in Hebrew. And he said, does anyone know the first time this word is used in the Bible? And I'm like, no. And he's like, the first time this word for the Sabbath is used is actually when Abraham is meditating, because the Sabbath is a meditation. That's the first context of that word. And so my mind is like blown. And he said that the next sentence is even more impressive. He says, and Abraham meditated, this word Shabbat, the Sabbath, and God appears. So he says, every time you get still, God will appear to you. And I'm like, what? This is the most gorgeous thing I've ever heard, right? So he said the idea of having one day a week where it's not rest like you're taking a nap. It's sitting with God. It's listening, right? It's being connected to that which you come from, that which loves you all day long. All the answers are there. They're not in here. They're in this like, it's like an antenna that comes from the heart, right, to hear what God is speaking to you. I thought that was amazing. So I said to my friend, can we like not get on the plane? I'm like, can we stay? Because there's nothing like soul food, right? Like you can go to the mall and you can buy a cute pair of earrings and you can be like happy for 3 hours. Or someone could tell you something like that and it changes your whole life. And you now have more capacity to like, you have energy moving through you that you just never had. So I'm like, I'm staying. So I go find a place to stay and figure it out for a few days until the next Shabbat, which was the next Sabbath. I was invited to a dinner in the old city, King David's old city of Jerusalem. And I go and it's so beautiful there. And I'm sitting at dinner and I'm crying. I can't stop crying because you know things that move you so much. I think tears are the heart's way of just noticing truth, right? You just cry when something hits you as the truth. And the rabbi's blessing his children on Friday night. And I'm just sitting looking at like the lights, the little candles flickering. And he says to me, do you want to stay? And I said, yeah. He said, because my wife and I, they had 7 children. He's like, we'll make space for you. I'm like, where? There's no space. He's like, when there's love, there's always space. So again, I'm like, oh my God. So I stay and learn from this Rabbi David Aaron, his wife and children. And I learned so much. And it was like hitting Control-Alt-Delete on my screensaver. It was like everything new came into what I knew to be true. And he taught me things like, you're a masterpiece, you're a piece of the master. You're someone because you're some of the one. You're not somebody, you're not a body, you're someone. You're some of the one. And I think these are very big ideas because I think most people grow up not feeling like they're enough and feeling like in order to be enough, they have to achieve more or have more things to post on Instagram or more piles of things or more bracelets or a Range Rover. It's ridiculous when really we were born some of the one. You're a masterpiece, a piece of the master. Second, you're born, right? He used to say to me, picture it like this. If God was the sun, which he's not, but if God was the sun, you'd be a ray of that light. You're inseparable. So how on earth would God not love his own light? It's like, it doesn't make any sense. So then he taught me, we start learning. And he said, have you ever heard of the law of attraction? I said, yeah, everyone's talking about it. He's like, let me tell you that in a Hebrew lens. The word Kabbalah means to receive. Likabel means to, that's the Hebrew word. So the mandate for human beings is to become a receiver. Now, what does it mean to be a receiver? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, a radio is a great metaphor. If you put a radio in this room right now, he said, first of all, do you hear anything? Any music? I'm like, no. He goes, yeah, there's no music. It's not a trick question. But if I turn on this radio, are we going to hear something? I said, yeah. He goes, okay. So we turn on the radio, literally. I don't even have a radio, right? We're all like streaming these days, but he had a radio and he goes, now, where was this music? It was like a instrumental, sort of like a classical music. He goes, where was this before I turned the radio on? He goes, it was right here already. It was hidden in plain sight. And as soon as I turn the radio on, we hear the frequency and all of a sudden the song plays. He said, now watch this. I'm going to change the tuning. And it's like nothing magical. We've all played with a radio at some point in our life, right? If you have grandparents, I grew up in the 80s, we still had radios. And he goes, now watch, depending on where I tune the tuner, we'll hear different songs. So different songs start playing, right? In different ways he tunes it. Sometimes it's staticky too. He said, what most people think is that whatever music is playing, so to speak, in their life, their relationships, the way the world looks, that it's just there, but it's the one that they're tuned to. Because if you wake up every day and you're tuned to God, you're tuned to abundance, you're tuned to love, you're tuned to generosity, you're tuned to compassion, you're tuned to creativity, your whole day is going to feel like that. But if you wake up every day and you are tuned to static, your day is going to feel like static. It's just going to be hard to hear. If you're tuned to negativity or self-doubt or shame or lack, you're going to go through the world. You could have the exact same day. It's like watching the old movie Groundhog Day, and Bill Murray lives the same day until he changes himself, and then the world changes. What Rabbi Aaron explained to me is that all of it already exists here. God's put everything in escrow for you. All the love, all the money, all the opportunities, all the great people. It's all here. You decide what you are going to receive by being a receiver. What are you receiving has to do with what is playing in here. And the only time you know that you're playing the right song is when this is a love song. Because the only song where you're going to meet God in every single second of what you do is when there's a love song playing in here. Because that's really what God wants to give you. In fact, he went even further and he said, imagine if, let's say, he said, let's use the analogy that God was light, electricity for a second. If you have a light bulb that's 45 watts and you try to pour more electricity through it, what happens? The light bulb breaks. What if you have a light bulb that's 75 watts? Well, it can hold more light. So he said, picture that God is trying to give you so much love, so much blessing. But if your receiver is this big, it breaks. And you don't even experience it as love. You experience the brokenness of it. When you open up in here to the amount of capacity you have to receive and therefore to give, then you can receive a maximum amount of love, of money, of blessing, because your job is not to hold on to it. It's to make it move through you like music. And that's the difference, is that we are one. And so when one wave in the ocean rises, they all wave, and they all rise. And when you allow yourself to have more love and light and energy, you, like I said to you when we got on here, you emit that like a radio. You are a walking radio then for light and love and blessing for the world. So why would you want less music to pour through you when you are part of the collective, and your assignment every day and your purpose every day is to be a vessel by which God's light pours through? So you're not serving anybody by feeling unworthy or being in lack or not receiving the maximum that you can in order to be a light for everybody else. So those are some of the things that I learned. So of course, that was a very magical 3 years of my life. And I just spoke to him this morning. I stayed in very close contact, and I've continued to learn for the last 20 something years.
I am just blown away. Like I feel like you summed up some of the things that I experienced just between last year and this year. But I especially love when you said, like, when you're tuned into this frequency of abundance, of love, and you named a whole slew of things. These are the things that you're going to attract, but you're not just attracting it for you, it's to flow through you, because all of these things,
That's
they
right.
flow. And I was sharing with you before we came on this podcast right now that the last couple of weeks I have just had this excitement. I wake up just super excited. I actually said to God, I'm looking forward to shooting content. I'm looking forward to talking to people. I'm looking forward to my Mondays. I used to dread Mondays. Like, it was just so heavy because of where I was before. But a lot of it had to do with, of course, letting go of certain things. But it also had to do with me waking up and being one with God, right? Like, there are times that we think that we're one with God, but actually we're in a cycle of just doing, 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 doing. And everything that we're doing is coming from flesh. So then it feels like we're rushing. It feels like we're hurrying. It feels like we can't get enough done. Like, whenever we start to feel the don't have enough,
Exactly.
you already know that you have lost some type of disconnection. Like, you have a disconnection between you and God.
Yeah.
It's when I center myself and I'm grounded, then I'm like, yeah, no, I don't have to rush. I have so much time to take care of this. The people are attracted to me. God's going to send the people. I'm just doing my part. But part of doing my part is being. That's what I had to understand. Last year, I was going through such a difficult time, and I kept asking God, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do? And then I finally paused and said, actually, what do I need to believe? Because that was
Mhm.
what the issue was. I was doing so much that I wasn't believing. And when I started asking the right questions, God started to answer. Because after I asked, what do I need to believe? I then realized I needed to ask, who do I need to be?
Yeah.
We were talking about that, just this being, right? Like, we're not people. We weren't created to be in lack. We weren't created to be in despair. We weren't created to be depressed. Like, we were created to be light.
Yeah.
People are attracted to light. So I love that you talked about this. It's so powerful. So why do you think, and I know you have an amazing answer for this, why do you think there are so many people who are not experiencing abundance, wealth, love, light? Like, why do you think that they are so resistant to this?
Okay. Well, there's a couple things. Number one, the way that we've been conditioned to believe is that it's selfish and greedy. And, the Bible verse is usually misquoted. People say money's the root of all evil. That's not the quote. The verse is the love of money. Because if you obviously put money on a pedestal and you love the money, that's going to lead you down a dark path, right? But we know that, like King David, for instance, who wrote all these Psalms, hallelujah, he was very wealthy and deeply spiritual. So you don't have to really choose between the two, right? Moses grew up in a palace and then, had this like very deep connection to the Almighty, right? So you don't have to choose number one. We need to flip that around. I think a lot of women, by the way, are told, be a good girl, which what we hear is don't be powerful. And once you allow money into your life, there's a power, meaning you have to become a steward. So you have to trust yourself with power. You have to trust yourself that you're an amazing steward of wealth. Why would you not believe in your power to make good decisions? In fact, the Talmud says that money is like rain falling in a garden. And meanwhile, what that means is it's like an activator, which means that if money was like rain and rain falls on weeds, weeds grow. If rain falls on roses, roses grow. So the Talmud says that which is will just become more with money. So if you're a person like a weed and you don't have good integrity and you get money, you're just going to do more things out of integrity. And you can see examples of that. But if you're a person who has a lot of integrity and you're blessed with money, you're going to do a lot of good with it. And you can see a lot of examples of that, which is why there's a name at the bottom of every hospital, right? So too, it's not mutually exclusive. You could be a person who has integrity, who just doesn't have any money, right? You're still a good person. And you could be a person who has no money, who's a bad person, right? It's not the money. It's what's inside of you and what do you do with it? So that's number one, is letting go of our resistance to money. That's a little bit of what I was just talking about, because we're wired, or sometimes we're wired to believe that money equals struggle. So why would I want more clients or more money? Because it means I'm just going to have to sacrifice more of myself, right? When the truth is that successful people learn to work not in their business as much as on their business. So money actually flows more from ease when you're more in ease, right? And every $1 billion ever created, what did it come from? An idea, inspiration, right? Apple, Coca-Cola, like an idea, which is something that's coming even from beyond you, right? You're just the vessel for something super creative, like Jim Henson creating Kermit. That's $1 billion, like a puppet, a sock, right? So really creativity is what equals the most amount of money. And creativity, we have an endless supply of. So it's not from hustle. It's from being in flow state. And flow state is actually a part of us that lets go of trying to solve problems and is more just a muse. God becomes our muse. And we are working with something bigger than us. Michael Jordan talks about being in flow state. Tom Petty talked about being in flow state. Flow state is the creativity that is bigger than you, that is flowing through you, that you allow for. And that's where most success comes from. But separate from that, the other reason people sometimes don't experience this is because we don't create from lack. We create from wholeness. So if you walk around all the time feeling that if only you had more money, you would feel full, you're just going to keep pushing it further away. For instance, if you're a girl, you go on a date and you have this belief that you're not enough without a man and you need a guy, or so you think, you need this guy's approval or else you feel like a zero, you're going to go on every date and it's never going to work. You're just going to keep repelling those people. But if you go on a date and you feel pretty whole, you like your life, you're enjoying what you're doing, you like your friends, you like where you live, you like your cat, you read your books, You go on a date, the guy's going to think you're a vibe. He's going to say, I didn't even know I like people with freckles. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be like, because it's the energy of wholeness that draws it toward you. So if you walk around all day long feeling this feeling of abundance is something outside of me, you're just going to keep pushing it away. Most people think that they will finally feel abundant when they have more zeros added to their bank account at the end, right? 10,000, a million, 4 million, or they have more stuff. How about abundance is the lightness of your own being? How about abundance is inner peace? How about abundance is joy for no reason? How about abundance is savoring the 48 shades of green on the tree outside your window that you missed, that God blessed you with today? How about abundance is knowing that success is not what you're chasing significance. And when you just go to the bus stop and you smile at someone for no reason, you feel significant because you made their day better. And that was just right there for you. There's just like a gold coin sitting there for you. You just gave someone a gift. When you're the kind of person who's a vibe like that, abundance flows to you because you are abundant. You walk in a room, everyone feels lighter. You walk in a room, people feel loved. Why? You're not trying to be impressive. You make other people feel impressive. The most impressive person in the room is not where you went to college or what car you drove there. It's how loving you are. What's your kindness? What's your vibe like, right? So we're sitting on abundance, right? We're calibrating everything around us to what's inside of us. You know, I used to be a musician, and if you took a guitar and you play it and there's another guitar in the room, the other guitars in the room will vibrate. But not just will they vibrate. If you're plucking the G string, the G string on the other guitar will vibrate. Why? Because it's the law of resonance. How we resonate is what comes back to us. How do you think you and I met? It's so obvious. We're on the same channel. When people say to someone, you have good energy, that's the best compliment you can get. Or when someone says to you, I feel like we're on the same wavelength, that's legit the truth, right? Do you ever notice why certain people, they just see the world a certain way? You could be sitting on the same bench in the same park on the same day, and you have a totally different view of reality, right? What you are perceiving is what you're selecting to perceive based upon what is happening inside of you. And so the most important meeting of the day is the meeting you have with God in the morning. The most important meeting of the day is you sit down and you say, I need you in attendance. And I need to ask you a question. What do I need to remember today? And I say to people, just the same way you selected what you want to wear today, what earrings, what are you going to wear? I want you to select, how are you going to feel today? You choose. Are you going to feel gratitude? Because you'll have a good day. I guarantee it. Are you going to feel surrender and give it to God and say, you know what, you're better at this than me. I'm going to put this in divine order. I'm going to let you hold it. My job is to smile, be loving, receive your message, and do my best. And when I see a struggle, to know that's an invitation. I'm going to put it in divine order, right? That's abundance. And I will tell you, and I'm not the only one who will tell this story. I've interviewed 1,000 people on my show, which I need you. I'm thinking like she needs to come on my show. But like I've interviewed 1,000 people. How come this is the thing we all have in common, right? It's not how old we are. It's not our zip code. It's not our race. It's not our religion. It's this. It's the choosing, right? It's choosing from here to make this a temple for the divine, period. End of story. Okay. So I came to Los Angeles. I was 24 after Jerusalem. I didn't know a soul here. And I was like skipping down the street because I was so fired up from having 3 years charging my batteries, in Jerusalem. And I come here and everything's like amazing. And I'm like the crisp air and the flowers and this and that. And I didn't have parents that even paid for me to go to college, let alone are going to, give me money. And somehow, one way or another, I'm making millions and millions of dollars a year. But it wasn't because I was like, oh my God, how am I going to make money? I was having a blast. There was nothing to be patient about. I was already having a blast from the second I got here because it's a choice. My grandmother used to say, it's easy to see the bad. You got to look for the good. But when you do that, you're going to be wired into something that's such a blessing. So I could go on and on into detail about that, but I want people to remember that there is so much inside of you that then will attract and receive stuff that you can't even believe just plopped out of the sky. And if you want, I could tell you a story that illustrates that. So I started a podcast when I was 37. Before that, I was a songwriter. I used to write music for Pretty Little Liars and Switched at Birth and McDonald's and stuff like that. I did that for 10 years. Anyways, I started a podcast at 37. I have 3 daughters. My youngest at the time was 3 weeks old. She's 8 now. And I started the podcast, and a few months later, my friends are like, you should go to Podcast Movement so you can network. And I'm like, networking, that's not really my thing, because it feels very it feels a little fake, I guess, to me. And I always feel like God's got me. So like, I don't need to do things like that. But I show up, and sure enough, everyone's passing out business cards, and I didn't bring business cards. And I turn to my friend Emma and I say to her, who does everybody want to meet? Like, what's the agenda? She's like, well, everybody wants to meet the people who work at Apple Podcasts, because if Apple Podcasts were to get to know you, I'm like, it just feels so slimy in here. I'm going to leave. I said, when does the conference start? She said, it starts in an hour. So I said, I'll meet you, save me a seat. I'll leave. I'll come back after. She's like, all right. So I leave. We're in Anaheim at a hotel. I leave the hotel. I walk 2 blocks to another hotel. I sit down. I feel peaceful again. I order an iced tea. There's a piano playing in the lobby. It's like 11 a.m. and I'm fine. I'm enjoying life. Next thing I know, this guy walks in. He sits on the couch next to me. He's reading the newspaper. He looks over, and we have the same badge on from the conference. And he says to me, were you at that networking party? I'm like, yeah, for like 5 minutes. He's like, I hate that stuff. I said, me too. And I said, where are you from? He's like, originally I'm from the Midwest, but now I live in California. We start talking, blah, 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 blah. 45 minutes later, we have this lovely conversation. He's like, here's my card. He's like, I'm the head of Apple Podcasts, and I would love to show you around the office. And you're like the nicest person I met here. And I'm like, you're the nicest person I met. He hands me his card, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I left that place completely because it felt like lack, and I wanted to move back into wholeness. So I just got an iced tea and enjoyed my morning. Because the thing is, when you put on a list the things you want, I want this opportunity. I want a book deal. I want $10 million. You know why you want it? Because of how you think it's going to make you feel. But why would you wait for something to happen to make you feel a certain way when you can just go feel whole and great and free and connected right now? So then he hands me his card, and I realize the street on the address is the same street that my daughter goes to preschool. And I said, are you that black building with valet parking? Because I never knew what that building was. It's a mystery. There's no sign on the building. He said, yeah. I go, I'll be there tomorrow at drop off. He's like, great, come see me. And we started an 8-year friendship, and my show has 55 million downloads. I mean, not because of that, but it was definitely helpful to have a mentor, but I wasn't needing it, right? And when I'll tell you one more story, I'm looking for an apartment when I'm 25. A year after I come to LA, I'm moving, and I see this apartment, and it's a little more than I want to spend, but I really liked it. And the landlord is showing me down the stairs to leave. And this woman I don't know walks over to both of us, me and the landlord. And the woman says, are you looking at that apartment? And I said, yeah. And she said, I'll tell you what, every time someone moves in there, they get married. It's always a girl. And within a year, she gets engaged and moves out. That's why it's always available. So you should move in there if you want to get married. And I thought, well, my sister's 3 years older. She's going to move in with me. She wants to get married. I'm going to call her right now. So I call her. I say, you're going to move in with me. This apartment has like amazing energy. You're going to get married. What winds up happening is I get engaged that year. But the woman who told me that on the sidewalk, who was walking by, who lived next door, is my husband's mother. And I'm telling you that if you can live your life as if God's in control, and you live your life then from infinite possibility, or you live your life from the past based on probability. What's most probable? Every single person that you and I look up to, whether it's JFK or Walt Disney or Martin Luther King, they didn't believe in probability. They weren't interested in what's most probable. They were interested in what's possible. And then the most amazing things happen in your life because you set down replaying the past and projecting it onto the future. What most people do, the reason they're feeling that lack and resistance is because they wake up and say, today won't be any different than yesterday. Why even get out of bed? And the truth is, until this changes and you crack open and you find that the greatest abundance is your being, your love, your light, your kindness, you're so significant based upon your creativity, your enthusiasm, your passion, your compassion. Until you break that open and find that and stop looking outside of you for whatever you think is going to fill you up, you're going to keep repeating the same day. But when you change and you move out of the brain into the heart and you start connecting with what's really you and enjoying your life and being a blessing to everybody, the abundance is going to be everywhere.
Oh man, you just gave us an entire masterclass in this. Also, where's that apartment? Because I need to move in.
Yeah.
I loved everything that you were sharing, right? And like this has to do with mindset and what we believe, right? A lot of times we are operating from this space of desperation and scarcity and lack. And these things are just not of God. But when we get back into alignment, and I can feel myself when I'm out of alignment too. Like this has happened to me last year. I was out of alignment the entire year. I was following the voices of my coach, of the world, of where I should be at a certain age. And it made me feel like I was out of alignment. But as soon as I came back into alignment with God, now, of course, I had to go through some healing. There was a lot of brokenness that was there that God had to heal. But as soon as I came back into alignment with God, I'm like, Lord, I just believe you. I just believe you. God said to me, He told me this back in 2020. He said, what you see in the spiritual is more real than what you see in the physical. And oftentimes we're looking at the physical. The bank account is low. I'm not getting the clients. I don't see this. I don't see that. But we're not really focused on what's actually happening in the spiritual, which is your alignment with God. And He's the one who's sending this your way. He's the one who's whispering in your ears and telling you, go here, sit here, just be, just be, just be. So I loved everything about your story. And so I know, did you want to add anything else before we start wrapping up?
No, thank you though for the way you receive it. And it's really beautiful to hear your commentary.
Absolutely. So, for those who are tuning in right now, how can they get access to you? How can they work with you? And I'll go ahead and drop your links in the chat as well.
Oh, that's so sweet. So we have a podcast, Abundant Ever After. It's the same name as the new book, which came out in December, Abundant Ever After. I'm on Instagram at Cathy.Heller. And we have actually a workshop coming up next week, which is called the Money Code, where we're talking all about going into detail about how to really like allow that into our life. And we have a coaching container called This Abundant Life. So there's all of those things you can find. And I just so appreciate you and enjoy talking to you so much.
And I appreciate you. And you have, like, there are people writing in the chat, like, this is amazing. There's something we did not get to touch on, but we may have to just do like a part two, which is a lot of the things you talked about. There are a particular group of people, especially they're Christians, right? Who don't believe in that because they think like it's new age, it's witchcraft. And so it tends to like block them from actually being in alignment with God in this way. And I remember you and I were having this conversation before. But if you can, do you want to touch on that just a little bit?
Well, I mean, everything we talked about today is just so real, right? There's nothing witchy about connecting to your heart, connecting to love, connecting to abundance within inside of yourself. I don't know a lot about like The Secret or the law of attraction. And there might be things in that that actually do feel off. Maybe that's what people are referring to. I'm not a practitioner of all of those things, right? What I just know to be true is that all day long, if you believe that you need something outside of you to feel whole and abundant, you miss the whole story. So it's the opposite of witchcraft. It's like, we're here thinking that we'll finally feel abundant when we have millions of dollars. You could be sitting in the most beautiful house on the most beautiful street with all the things, feeling so lousy inside, because then you realize once again, oh yeah, this doesn't make me feel what you want. I mean, think about if you ever watch a movie and there's a girl who finally sets the boundary or speaks up for herself, and then she runs down the beach and you're watching that montage. You want to be her. You're looking for wholeness. You're looking for being in authenticity. That's the opposite of witchcraft. It's like you think what you need is stuff. You have way bigger dreams than piles of stuff. It's how you want to feel throughout your life. And so what I'm saying is the funny thing though about it is when you feel lit up and at ease, and there's equanimity about you, everything comes to you because it's so resonant. It's like you can throw a tiny rock in the water and make a tiny ripple, or you throw a big rock and you make a big ripple. When we are in a place of ease and peace and joy and well-being, we project such goodness around us. And then when things come to us, we give them away. Doesn't even matter. That's where you want to be. I said to Rabbi Aaron when I was in Jerusalem, what's the holiest thing I can do while I'm here? What site do I visit? What prayer do I say? And he writes on a sheet of paper an address. He hands me the address. I go, where is this? What is this? He says, you're going to get to this place, knock on the door. The woman who lives there is a widow. Offer to do her dishes. Like, we think the holiest things are different than what they are. The holiest thing is loving somebody for no reason, because that's what we came here to. And then the look on their face, like we have a gardener that comes on Wednesdays. My kids, we all race to see who can give the gardener the ice water the fastest. And the look on his face, it's worth more than $10 million. $10 million doesn't really make you feel like anything. So what I'm saying is, it's not stuff that you want. It's more of yourself to be revealed. It's to have beautiful thoughts in your mind. It's to feel peace and ease and well-being and gratitude, and to feel full and to feel connected. And when you're like that, you just led, because you're setting down, trying to figure it out. You're not in control. So I don't know enough about all those things that people think are witchy, as I don't study that. Like, I went right to the source. Even like the way I learned Judaism, I never went to the Kabbalah Center. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if I can't speak to it because I've never been. I like literally just sat down with a rabbi in the old city of Jerusalem and learned Hebrew and learned how to read it in the text. And it's like plain as day, right? Thousands of years old, just sitting there. So we could probably talk about that a lot more because it is really juicy and interesting, but I hope that helps.
Oh, did it help? Absolutely. Like, I just love that it's the positioning. I don't know about that, but this is what I learned.
I really don't. I never find that stuff interesting, because to me, that's still about lack.
Yeah.
What I've heard, at least. It's like, just picture a red bicycle, and there's a red bicycle. It's like, you're not in it even for the red bicycle. Like, to me, that's not interesting. I'm not sure what that's about. To me, it's about what's happening in here is what you're after. The feeling of what you're after is that's all we want, is a feeling. The only reason you wanted that thing to happen is because of how you thought it would make you feel. Yeah. So when you find your way back to God, it is on tap all the time. Joy, purpose, ease, wisdom, surrender, goodness. It's like nonstop. And when you walk that way through the world, you make other people have better ideas just being in your presence. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, the amount of opportunities that come to you. Like, I started a podcast in my closet and it started making millions of dollars. Why? Because I wasn't doing it for the millions of dollars. I was doing it for the love of just being called to share the message. And when that kind of resonance is felt, people just are drawn to anything like that, right? And then what do I do with that now? Give tons of charity and enjoy it. And also know that I'm the daughter of the king. And so it's good to eat organic food, and it's good to wear linen clothes, and it's good to not pour, fast food into this body, right? And so I use it and also use it in the world. That's a blessing.
I can listen to you all day. Like, the chat is going crazy.
I can't see the chat, but I love you guys.
Yeah, they are loving everything that you're saying, because all of what you're talking about is a way of being, as opposed to constantly doing. Like, it's a way of, like, when we're caught up in this, I have to hurry up, I have to rush. That's a way of doing. That's not a spiritual thing. That's a physical thing. But abundance is spiritual. It's eternal. There's no beginning. There's no end to abundance. And God is like, if you just be, then you can attract these things. And not just attract, you can create an environment where these things just thrive in it. And so I just love everything that you shared. I thank you so much for releasing your wisdom upon us on Wisdom to Wealth podcast. You have been such a light, such a blessing. You've just shifted something in me. I'm like, I need to go enjoy some time with God right now before I continue my work day. But everyone in the chat, like, they're like, this is very helpful. Going to the original source, Jesus, going to God, right? Like, I love it. Thank you, Cathy, so much for just blessing us with your wisdom. Thank you all for tuning in today. We will be back with another episode on Monday. Actually, it's a solo episode, so I'll actually be sharing my journey from wisdom to wealth. But thank you all for tuning in. This has been such a blessing. Have a wonderful
For
day.
me too. God bless, guys.